Well, tell me, how would you describe the urban fantasy genre?
I always say urban fantasy is your modern day with supernatural, paranormal, vampires, witches, what have you, elements in it. But it's usually it usually has a strong female heroine as the lead. Doesn't necessarily have to have romance. Sometimes it does. A little too much romance, you're veering off into paranormal romance. But for most of the urban fantasy, it's modern day settings with that supernatural or otherworldly element that they're fighting against.
Okay. That makes it very clear.
Well, there's so much blending of genres these days. It's really hard to pinpoint one specific thing. And so,
I mean, I know I'm in a lot of different, writers and promotional groups on Facebook, and I see so many different genres, and I'm just sometimes I go like, I don't even know what that is, and I read so much, and I'm just like, okay.
They overlap. I mean, you got, speculative fiction and magical realism are like sister genres that are so close. You've got, there was another one. Oh, I wish I could remember how they said it.
Yeah, because I think, alt history steampunk falls under speculative fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I understood that.
They do overlap. That's why I always say I just write under the fantasy umbrella. It covers everything.
My name is Madeleine Holly Rosing. I am the writer-creator of a steampunk supernatural series, Boston Metaphysical Society. And we started with a graphic novel, a 6-issue miniseries, which is about an ex-Pinkerton detective, a spirit photographer, and a genius scientist who battles supernatural forces in late 1800s Boston. We have 3 sequels to the graphic novel, Scourge of the Mechanical Men, A Spirit of Rebellion, and Ghosts and Demons. Our artists switched. My original artist, Emily Hugh, is on the first 6 issues, and Gwen Tavares took over the sequels. I also have prose. I have a prequel novel called A Storm of Secrets, and an anthology of short stories and novellas called Prelude. And expanding outward, I have like 3 major projects right now, which is working on the next novel, the next graphic novel, and also audio plays, all set in the same universe.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that. The big expanse of it. Now, how long did it take you to work on?
Oh, wow. Well, we probably started about 7-8 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the original concept of Boston Metaphysical was a TV pilot that I wrote at UCLA Film School, thus the hat. And it got read, but steampunk and people liked it, but steampunk back then was like not quite mainstream, and people were scared of the whole period piece because costumes and all that other stuff.
See, that's one of the best parts about it. I
Yeah.
love how they blend everything in, and that they have that authentic feel, even though it's like an alternate universe.
Yeah. I mean, I would describe Boston Metaphysical as more alternate history than steampunk.
Okay.
It has more steampunk. It has steampunk elements in it, but it's completely character driven. And I have cool gadgets, but they're just an organic part of the universe. They don't dominate a storyline or anything like that. But it was more fun for me to work on a universe from the more societal, economic viewpoint and deal with classism, racism. Classism is a big theme of mine, and sexism as well, because it's just it's an organic part of the time period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's fitting.
Yeah.
Usually it's sci-fi that targets like racism and inequality and all that through like alien species, because that's so much easier for people to accept.
Yeah.
But to hear it for steampunk, I like that, and I think you're right. It absolutely, especially with the gender inequality, especially during that time period. So that's perfect.
Oh yeah. And so no, it's been a lot of fun. I started doing cons about 7 years ago, and just gradually started building out the world, very slowly, because, guess what? I have a budget.
Yep.
and the Kickstarters have gone really well. I'm happy to say. So, I mean, I don't think we'd exist without Kickstarter. That just, because as you probably know, it's expensive to produce a comic.
Yeah, I can't even imagine the comic side of it. I mean, I know on the book side of it what it takes to produce a book and the budget on that. All right, so last week when we talked about this, we mentioned the different POD, that's print on demand publishers, and the different costs towards production. And you're going to see a lot of numbers on the screen right now. The ones I want you to focus on right now are the per page print cost and the cost per book. These are the costs that you are not going to pay, but are going to go against your royalty as the production cost. So the more pages you have in your book, the more expensive the book is going to be to print. Keep that in mind. The three biggest ones that we deal with mostly in the indie world are KDP, Ingram Spark, and Drafted Digital has recently dipped their toes into the printing world. Now, each of them, as you can tell, offer slightly different charges for each of these things. So when selecting your printer, you want to make sure that the cost is right for you. If you'll notice on KDP, the color per page print cost is a little bit different than the Ingram Spark. So it's going to cost you a little bit more to produce a book if you're doing a children's book with lots of pictures through KDP than Ingram. Keep that in mind. Now, as we go through this, we're going to make these costs make sense to you and why you should care about them. First of all, let's check in with our budget. If you remember from last time, we outlined the production cost and gave you a low and high estimate on what your book could cost just to produce. Now we want to try and recoup those costs so we can earn a profit on our book. So we're going to play the numbers game with this one. I'm going to go with an estimate that we use the low end of $750, and we had a marketing budget of $250, giving us a grand total of $1,000 as our production cost for this book. So that production cost is what you need to recoup before your book is considered profitable. For you, the comic book side, art is probably one of your most expensive areas to cover.
Yeah.
And finding an artist that fits your style as well.
Yeah, it was interesting because Emily, our first artist, was, when I hired her, she was straight out of school and very, very extremely talented, but had a more anime manga kind of feel. And she did more, she crossed it over, did more mainstream, but if you look at the art, you can definitely see it like through the eyes and things like that. But when, she moved on after the first 6 issues, which, people do that, and she's done tremendously well, and that's great. I hired Gwen, Because since I'm the one who gets to write the metaphorical check, so everyone gets paid by PayPal or something, I get to hire women. I make that call, and that's my intention, that all of the artists on Boston Metaphysical will be women. That's just the way it's going to be.
No, I like that. And it is your baby, so you have to make the calls that are going to be right for your project.
Yeah. And Gwen is a little older. It's like Gwen is old or something. She's like in her early 30s or something.
Oh my God, so old.
I know, she's old. Amazingly talented, and she brought a different sensibility to it. The characters look older, but when we moved into the sequels, but it fit because of everything that the characters had gone through in the first 6 issues. They had all matured as characters, so they should look older. And so the segue to me just worked beautifully. I'm happy to say that Gwen is on board for our 4th sequel, which I have a draft of that done now. We'll probably run a Kickstarter for that in early spring.
It's a lot of work. That is so much work. I'm like running all of the numbers through my head at what it takes to produce, and then getting the artwork lined up and the production, the printing. Who do you use for printing?
I've used a variety of printers over the last few years, and it kind of depends on if you want to do a POD or if you want to do a large size printing and offset. I do all offset large quantity printing for the Kickstarters. And so the last printer I used was Printlore. They did a great job. I believe they used a printer in Canada, Marquis. Did a beautiful job. I used Kraken back in the day before they did the crash and burn. And then on POD, there's several very good, if you're just looking to just fill in, because I know I had been, waiting for the books to arrive from a Kickstarter, but yet like WonderCon was in a few weeks, and I just wanted say 25 books for WonderCon just to show them. And so I would use Raw is very good. I think it's Comics Wellspring, also very good.
I've heard of them.
So no, there's a lot, and I mean there's more out there that are very solid that I've used and have found them to be quite good.
Have you? I know, and I don't like Kindle Create's program right now, just for regular book or ebook publishing. But they do seem to have the ability to have picture books and comic books formatted into the ebook format, and they translate a lot better. Have you been using them at all for the ebook side of it, or is it just strictly a print thing?
Well, yes and no. We were picked up by SourcePoint Press in it was late 2018, but we hit Diamond distribution in 2019. So we're actually national now, which was pretty cool, through SourcePoint. And SourcePoint has actually handled all the Kindle. So I haven't dealt with that. I know some people have just said it's just been a pain, and very trying. I have had sequels, I have put up on just for print, on Kindle, and they look fine. I mean, I get proofs of them, and they look fine. Mine are better because they're offset, but the Kindle versions they're totally fine. And then for, let's see, well, SourcePoint is handling the trade in the first 6 issues, and that's over at Comixology and Drive-Thru Comics. And then I have the sequels up on Drive-Thru Comics, because then you can just upload a PDF, and it's fine. On Drive-Thru. And Drive-Thru is very, from the creator side, has been very, very easy to use and pretty seamless.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I have to, I mentioned the Kindle Create side just because that's one of the things I do as my other life. When I'm not writing, I'm helping other people produce their work, and all the programs that I've had to use in order to get the ebooks for, Kindle or for, Sony, Nook, Kobo, all the different versions, they all have different tweaks that they need. And for something that's solidly picture, like a comic book or like a children's book, the formatting is ridiculous. And you would think Kindle creates new program that's supposed to translate perfectly to a Kindle format would be perfect, but it's okay for picture books, not so much when it comes into doing regular novels or even nonfiction books. Yeah.
Well, I think it's time for you to introduce yourself now.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was so interested in what you were saying.
Okay. We can get back to it. It's fine.
Definitely. All right, so my name's Katie Salidas, and I am a jack of all trades, master of none. So I do a lot of work in the indie publishing side. I help people with formatting, book covers, interiors, editing, you name it, all but writing the dang book for you. And then I also run a podcast, Spilling Ink, where we talk to creators about their journey into publishing, how they did it, what they're doing now, how they're marketing, all that good stuff. And then, when I get a couple free minutes myself, I write. So I've got about 6 different book series that I've been working on over the last 10 or so years, primarily in the urban fantasy genre. I do have one dystopian series, which is set about 200 years in the future. But it's more akin to, it's still urban fantasy, but it's told from the underdog perspective of the supernatural creatures. Instead of humanity being the underdog fighting against the supernatural element, it's flipped. So humans are the enemy in this one.
Okay. So what are the names of your series?
Okay. So that one that I was just talking about, that's the Chronicles of the Uprising. That's a 6-book series. I have the Running from the Devil series, which I co-wrote with a friend and my co-host on Spilling Ink, Jane Taylor. I have the Agents of a.s.s.e.t series, which I'm currently writing now. It's on the 5th book for that one right now. That is definitely modern day urban fantasy. I also have a big world that is 3 different series all kind of lumped together. It's the Immortalis series, the Little Werewolf series, and the Old Town Pack series, which is about 9 books altogether. And that's more paranormal romance than traditional urban fantasy. It does veer more into the lovey-dovey side of things.
You've been busy.
Just a little.
Just a little. Is there a particular genre you lean towards?
I love magical creatures, and that's why I don't nail myself down to one genre. I love exploring all the different magical creatures. So I've written about witches, I've written about werewolves, I've written about vampires, different fae creatures. With the Agents of a.s.s.e.t series, I'm exploring all the different fae creatures, and each book introduces probably 2 to 3 new creatures in it, and a little their lore inside of it. So as the series gets bigger, I get further and further into the different realms with other creatures that you don't normally hear about.
About how long does it take you to, say, punch out your first draft for a novel?
I usually set myself about 1,000-word a day goal. And that way I can realistically get a first draft finished in about 3 months. That's just a first draft, though. It's not revision, not edited, not any of that good stuff that needs to happen. But that means I can generally write about 3 books a year if I stay on track. That hasn't happened this year. 2020 has, it's definitely been an interesting year. I'm sure you're feeling the same effects, too.
Yeah, it's, there was, you kind of think, okay, we're in this lockdown, I can get all this stuff done. And not so much. I mean, I do have like 3 major projects on my plate, and thinking that I could do more than that is just like completely unrealistic. And I'm just not going to kill myself, over that. I do like to escape from the Boston metaphysical universe every once in a while, just to clear my brain. And fortunately, I've been asked a few times this year to was hired to write like short comic short stories in other people's universes, and so that's it's kind of it's fun to play in somebody else's sandbox. And so yeah, there's one that's with the Menagerie, Ramon Javoa, I think is his last name. That's his world. that'll actually be on Kickstarter. He brought in a bunch of terrific writers and artists, and that's going to be launched on Kickstarter November 11th, I believe. It's under his Menagerie IP. That I have another one I have to do in November, and yeah, but it is because it just forces your brain to think in a different way and just gives it a break. I know earlier this year I was just writing like a lot of nonsense flash fiction just to write something that wasn't Boston Metaphysical and just go play with it. And I just found that to be really relaxing. And in fact, I would encourage writers that if you get stuck or burned out, just to, go play with, 100, 200 words and not worry about where it's going to go, if you're going to try to sell it or anything. Just use it as an exercise to play with a character or a setting or a scene that, or a world that otherwise you haven't, really allotted time for. But you were kind of curious. You wanted to go play over there for a little while and then go back to, the work you need to do.
Free writing is so freeing, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
When you can just let yourself write without having to worry about what's on the page, who's going to read it, but just to let your brain have that recess time. It really does help to get the creative feel back. And I don't know about you, but this year it's felt just like slogging through the mud when it comes to writing. And I used to have that 1,000-word-a-day goal, and I would be able to sit down and just, hammer out words view. Doesn't have to be perfect, but something. And lately it's just, there's so much draining that I sit down to the computer and I can't think. So I've been trying to figure out other ways to be creative, other things I can do so that I can keep the spirit alive, and I will get back to the writing. It's, I'm just on a little bit of a hiatus at the moment.
Yeah, no, hiatus is fine. I actually took Kat Rambo's flash fiction course. It's an online one that you can do at your own pace. And, it was very, very well structured and easy to do. And it was just a nice kind of easy guided way to walk through flash fiction and to, she had some cool exercises and just to kind of keep your brain in gear, but without stressing about anything.
We got Nano, and one of the things I remember we did last year, and I may join in on this again just because it's a good exercise in having accountability, but doing regular sprints was super, super helpful on those nights where I just didn't really know what I wanted to write, but I knew that I needed to write something, and having other people around who are doing the same thing as you, and you've got like that 20-minute timer, and at the end of the 20 minutes, everyone's comparing, how much words did we get in there? Even if you just wrote the word hi 15 times, you still got something on the page. And that was the goal. Just get something on the page. I did. I signed in for one of the sprints because I needed a kick in the pants. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to write. I may just write the word hi over and over until the 30-minute timer is done. And what's funny is I did. I wrote hi a bunch of times and then it clicked. And there was an argument happening in my brain, and I just started typing out the argument that was happening between two characters, and I ended up loving the scene afterwards. I completely enjoyed it, kept the scene, but it was just that exercise of forcing myself to sit in the chair and knowing I was accountable to give a word count at the end of the timer that made me go, okay, I'm going to do this. And it did. It let me finally figure out something to write.
Yeah, I actually never did Nano, usually because in the past, I've run my Kickstarters in like mid-January. So November is my run-up, and I'm prepping for the Kickstarter. And if you have not run a Kickstarter, it's a second full-time job. And you really need to start organizing a good 3 months ahead of time. And that way you can do it in little dribs and drabs, so you're not trying to cram everything. So, I'm setting up interviews and podcasts and getting, PR stuff written up and then going back and doing something else. And then at that time, I'm usually getting in art from my artists, so I have to go through that and give her notes. And so, yeah, it's never been an optimal time for me.
So let's go into this Kickstarter, because I've never actually run a Kickstarter before. And I've seen other people use it to fund their projects. What have you found is the best way to go about doing that?
Read my book.
Nice plug right there. I like that.
Yeah, I have a book out called Kickstarter for the Independent Creator. The second edition's out, and though I do update it every year, it's been out for a couple years. It is meant for beginners, and though it is helpful if people just need to go back and and revisit maybe steps that they missed. But for comics, and I've also done panels for crowdfunding for authors as well. You need to set a reasonable goal that also doesn't leave you in the hole that you have enough money to finish your project. For novelists, that's generally going to be a lot lower than it is for comics. Because say you may, have enough money to pay for editing, but you need some help for the cover. And so you may want to set a goal of, $1,000 or something. So yeah, you need to sit down and, figure out what those goals are. But then you really need to work on a mailing list. And this is where it's tough right now because you can't do cons. And I started my first mailing list from going to cons. I had on my table, sign up for my newsletter, here. And I only send it out once a month so it doesn't make people crazy. And so that actually was a selling point with people. It's like, I'm not going to spam you because I don't have time. And they would laugh, and then they would sign up, which would be great. But that mailing list is critical. Not having cons. And oh, by the way, eventually we will have cons again. And I do highly recommend that authors, particularly those that are in the science fiction or fantasy genre, just go get a table, split a table with somebody, and get little bookmarks or postcards or something fun that you can hand out, and that piece of paper for people to sign up for your newsletter. And yes, you should have a newsletter. To just start building an audience. I mean, just novel authors in those genres, a con, you're with your people. Those are your people. You want to be there.
I'm sitting here nodding because I'm like, yes, absolutely. Cons are my favorite thing to do, and I miss them so much this year. Oh my goodness, I miss them so much this year. Yeah. I partner up, we call ourselves the League of Fantasy Authors, and I partner up with a bunch of different authors from the Southwest area. So one of our authors is in California, another one's in Tucson, and we join together and we share tables. You've got somebody who's got your back, you've got somebody who's always at the table in case you need to go away for a panel or a potty break or whatever.
Yeah.
Or just go chase down somebody in an awesome costume, because I've been known to do that. But yeah, and it's your people. It is so much your people. And one of the things I've always said is, when you go to a convention, whenever you're trying to sell a book in person, you want to attract somebody based on shared likes. But at a convention, they're literally advertising what they like in what they're wearing. It's either on their t-shirt or it's the costume they're wearing. And you instantly have this shared connection. So it's not the used car salesman, hey, buy my book. It's, hey, oh my God, I love Firefly, so do you, let's talk about this. And then you can build that rapport with them.
Yeah.
Oh, I miss conventions. God, I miss them so much.
Yeah, I mean, I knew they were going to be canceling, San Diego. But when they actually did, it was like, oh, it was so sad. I mean, up until about 2 years ago, I did, except for maybe WonderCon, I was doing probably upwards of 20 cons a year by myself. And
that gets expensive.
Well, I also know how to, choicehotels.com and hotels.com and bring in your own food. So yeah, I know how to to do the budget version of all of this.
You definitely have to learn that over time. It's
yeah.
Every con you do, you learn a new tip and a new trick to make the next one better.
Yeah, and then at San Diego Comic Fest, I live in LA. So a number of years back, San Diego Comic Fest had myself and another lady as guests. So they comped us, and they comped us a room. And so I looked at their panels, and there was one that was being run. It was about space and spacecraft and things like that. And my husband has worked at JPL for over 40 years. So I contacted the organizers. I said, I think you want husband on this panel because, oh, by the way, we're going to be there. And they said, yes, we want your husband on the panel. So he and the other gentleman, they did a great job. And there was a lady in the audience who came up and she says, you ought to do this at WonderCon. And a light bulb went on in my head. And I looked at my husband. I said, yes, you should do this at WonderCon. Well, he put in a panel application, and I can tell you, I think it's been the last 3 years at least, he's had a panel at WonderCon and San Diego called No Tow Trucks Beyond Mars, where he brings in all these fabulous rocket scientists, and I've been to it. It's not only educational, it's hysterical. They tell fun stories that no one has heard anywhere. But, within JPL. And so when he started getting these panels, he started coming more often to help me, which was good because at this point I have a lot of inventory and I needed some help to sell. I mean, I knew I was losing sales because I was the only one there. It's tough. So we had figured out, this isn't his life. So, you're trying to balance and trying to find okay, well, let's work out the cons you have the panels at and you really want to be at, or I really need your help, and then I'll do the rest myself. And so we had all that worked out this year, and then, it all fell apart.
And like you're saying about the being the only one at the table, that was one of the reasons that we started up our League of Fantasy Authors, is we all write under the fantasy umbrella. So we all have different varieties of fantasy. So when people come to the table, if they don't like my books, they may like Jenna's books or Jacob's books. I point people in the right direction. So we've always got somebody who's got our back if you're not able to be there 24/7. Which is it's important, because if you're not at the table, you're not able to talk to people.
Yeah, well, it also sounds to what you're saying, that everyone in your group is very proactive when dealing with potential customers, and being on the comic side, and particularly, you'll see a lot of artists will just sit there and draw and won't even look up. Or you've probably seen that, and there are some of us who take a very different approach. I mean, I rarely sit down, and I just hand out, oh, would you like a bookmark? And get them over there, have you seen the story? And just start talking and, be polite to everyone. And so, even if someone doesn't buy anything, which is fine, they have a good time because they may have a friend who likes what I'm doing. And they can say, hey, I just met this nice lady and they have this thing that, you might like. So go check it out. And it's a win-win for everybody. And plus it makes the whole experience so much more fun.
One of the things we do, if we have enough time to do it ahead of time, usually it's the night before in the hotel room, we all get together, we all pool our bookmarks together, we usually print up a table card, and we've got a little goodie bag we fill with some candy and stuff, and we create these little gift bags just to give to anybody who walks by. And, most people are like, oh, thanks, and they'll take it, but it's got the reminders of where to find us. Because especially if you write in a series, whether it's comic books or print books, you want to create that bond with the reader. It's not just about selling the book. It's about creating somebody that's going to be a fan, who's going to want the next one and the next one and the next one. And just giving them, just trying to sell them one book isn't going to do that. You want them to like you, to invest in you as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why people go to cons, so they can actually meet the creators and have a conversation. And over the years, some of the fans have actually become friends of mine. And that's amazing. I mean, that's just been so much fun to develop those long-term relationships with people, just because they happened to stop at your table and you had a conversation, and then you kept seeing them again and again and again and again. And
that's one of my favorites. I love when you go to a con the next year and they rush up to your table and they're so excited to see you because they remembered you from last year. And you remember, and it's meeting old friends.
We have a question from Joe that he just threw in. What makes a good con in your eyes? I guess I would probably differentiate that depending on if I was an attendee or if I'm there selling. I mean, because it's kind of different. I mean, if I'm going to go to a con that is not genre specific, like there are steampunk conventions that I also attend, those are a blast. I mean, teapot racing, come on, you can't beat that. It's amazing. From a selling point of view, the steampunk conventions or where you have a targeted demographic for your particular genre is terrific. Even though they may not have as many people as a larger con, everyone there is potentially interested in what you're doing. And one, you make really good friends there. Always awesome people. And, quite frankly, from a selling point of view, you don't have to sell as hard because they're already there. They come up and they talk and it's chat, and you're not trying to delve into the masses, say if you're at, Phoenix or Denver or San Diego, whereas, yes, they're interested in comics, but they may want a horror comic or superhero comic or something. And so you have to introduce what you're selling to them, your product, to a brand new person over and over and over again. And I can't tell you how many times I have pitched the project. I'm sure you have too.
Yeah.
I can do it in my sleep. That's another thing. As a creator, what you have to learn to do is your elevator pitch. You've got to be able to sum up your book or your series in 30 seconds or less. And then if they want to know more, they'll tell you, and then you can expand on that. A larger con, you want a high attendance as much as possible. But I also recommend smaller cons that target the demographic for your genre. How about you?
I obviously want to, break even at least on my table. I always want to make sure that my costs are covered. So that's kind of the bottom line. But what really makes a con good for me is when I'm so busy, I have so many things to do that I just don't have the ability to sit down. I love doing panels. I absolutely love doing panels. I used to be scared to death of them. And now I love being able to sit on panels and answer questions and sit among, other authors who are, probably 10 times better at sales than I am and who have book series that I personally love. I just love that. Just to be able to sit up there with them, it's great. But it's the meeting other people. Like I said, I've been known to chase people down with really cool costumes because I have these fandoms too. And when I see an awesome Doctor Who, I want to appreciate it. And I do a lot of talking. And I've been known, my booth mates usually, they laugh at me because if a Doctor Who walks by, I'm guaranteed for the next hour to not be selling anything because I will be debating about which Doctor Who is the best, which villain was the best with whoever walks by because I enjoy it. I have so much fun interacting with everybody. So that's what makes the con good for me. I really enjoy just being so busy and so, able to go everywhere and do everything that by the end of the day, I just have to fall asleep because there's nothing left. I've enjoyed every single moment of the day.
Yeah, I enjoy being on panels as well. I almost always learn something from the other panelists. Last year at Gaslight Expo in San Diego, which is a steampunk convention, Gail Carriger was the guest of honor, and I was on a couple panels with her, and that was incredibly enlightening. I mean, everything that came out of her mouth was like, okay, I'm getting educated here, and this is amazing, and definitely appreciated her being there. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to go sit out in the audience because you don't need me on this panel. I'm just going to let you go, do your thing. It's pretty amazing when, you start learning from your fellow panelists. It's a lot of fun.
It can be inspiring too. The Agents of A.s.s.e.t series that I'm working on right now partly was inspired by a panel that I sat on about 3 years ago at Phoenix Comic-Con, where we were talking about the different pantheons of gods and creating magical systems. And as I was sitting there listening to everybody talk about how they created theirs, I started formulating my own. And I was excited. I was inspired. I couldn't wait to write that book series when I got home. So it was fun, and it was, it gave me a reason to write another book.
Yeah, a few years back, a fan stopped in, and she was also a volunteer at, once again, Gaslight Expo in San Diego. So she was sitting next to me, helping me out, and because I was there on my own, and we started chatting about the stories and some other stories she'd read, and the conversation I had with her got me thinking about, my main character, one of my main characters, Caitlin O'Sullivan, and, the repercussions of some of her choices. And that conversation inspired what became one of the sequels, Spirit of Rebellion. And it's so interesting just having this, very short, interesting conversation with a fan and having, developing something out of it. So yeah, that's another good thing about cons, because you never know when that's going to happen, that someone is going to say something, you're going to go like, it's interesting. Maybe I could do something with that.
There's also the aspect too that when you speak on a panel, and you don't get to talk to everybody individually, but after that panel's done, they come find you at your table.
Yeah.
Because they really enjoyed what you were saying, or they wanted to talk further about, different points that you had made during the panel. And it's that point of contact. It's so important. And that's what I've been missing this year, I think. I needed that. I needed that so much. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've been unable to write as well this year as I have in the past. Because I'm missing that just little element.
Though, I've done a number of online cons, but they're just...
It's not the same.
It's not the same.
No, it's not the same. I mean, I still appreciate being able to do, an online.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And answer live questions and comments, but there is that element that's missing, that personal, that connection, that energy is just, it's not there. Although I worry about what cons are going to look like next year. I mean, how long is it going to be until we're really ready to go back to what we had before, safely?
Probably not until there's a vaccine. And it's being distributed widely. So, next year may be kind of a bust as well. Maybe until the fall.
I thought it was not funny at the beginning, but it was interesting at the beginning that for as extroverted as I can be when I'm at a convention, I'm typically a very introverted person. I have those moments, where I'm comfortable enough to be extroverted. And so I figured, I'm fine being home. I'll get a lot of work done. It's great. No problem. But even I'm getting to the point now where I'm like, I need people. I need to get out and meet people. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I'm an introvert as well, which surprises some people because I have I'm very proactive in my selling.
Okay.
But always it's proactive, but it's more of what I call a soft sell. But they're just like, how can you do that? You just like stand there and say like, hi, would you like a bookmark? Have you seen this story before? Oh, I like your t-shirt. I like your hat.
See, the thing with the misconception about introverts versus extroverts, it's all about energy exchange, really.
Yeah.
An introvert doesn't like to expend energy on nothing. An extrovert can expend energy everywhere, and they're actually recharged by every connection they make. Whereas an introvert, it's got to be something meaningful in order for them to expend the energy. So I think that's why you can turn it on and sell at a convention, but you're connecting. You even said it yourself. Oh, I like your shirt. That's awesome. There's a connection there. It's not just the, hey, how's the weather, random small talk conversation. There's a purpose behind it. And so you can do it for that purpose.
Yeah, and then after the con is over, people go like, oh, we're going to get drinks, we're going out to dinner, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I'm good. And all I want to do is like get my iced tea, some cookies, and watch HBO and talk to nobody. And except my husband, if he's not with me, I'll call my husband and tell him how the day went. But otherwise, that's it. It's just me, HBO, and my cookies, and that's all I care about. And sleeping, and then wash, repeat, and do it again the next day.
That reminds me of a picture from, I want to say it was last year's convention at Phoenix. So the league got together. We shared a hotel room. We shared a booth. So we were all together. And the day was over for the convention. But, they always have the nighttime activities. And we all closed up our booth and we walked back to the room. We're like, yeah, we're going to go and we're going to have fun. We're going to hang out. We're going to do stuff. We get to the room and each of us, there's a picture that one of them snuck a picture while we were doing this. We all just kind of sat back with our phones for an hour straight, just sitting in the same room silently on our phones, nobody talking. And that was it, that we were perfectly happy. We never went out afterwards. We were all so done at the point.
Yeah, no, I remember the very first San Diego Comic-Con I ever did. And at that point, I was in Artist Alley, which, if you don't know, you apply for, it's free, and for those who are watching this don't know, but you get like 4 feet of space. So you really have to fight to get noticed, and really have to extend yourself out there, because people just, after a while, San Diego's so big, I think attendees just get snowblind, and they can't process anymore. They're just it's sensory overload. But yeah, the first 2 years we did that. But the first year, Sunday night, my husband came with me because you can't do San Diego by yourself. You just can't. And we got back to the room. We're talking about going out to dinner. And I just said, I sat down. I said, I can't move. We're going to have to order in pizza or something because I can't move. I can't do anything anymore.
It's draining, though. It really is like fighting for attention. And any of the bigger cons, it just gets worse and worse. Because you're right, it's sensory overload. Every single table they're passing has something shiny and sparkly and attention-grabbing to look at. And almost every table, you have people who are trying to engage. There are, like you said before, there's a lot of artists who just sit there drawing the whole time. I don't know how they make any of their table fees. I really don't. Because they don't seem to do anything but draw. And I never
see them say no. Commissions.
Oh.
A lot of them have set up commissions before they even arrived.
Okay.
So it's a done deal for the better artists. Yeah, they're just doing commissions. Yeah.
I was baffled. I look at it and I'm like, why are you even here? You're not doing anything. Meanwhile, me and my other group, we're handing out free stuff, talking to people. I mean, it's all day long. And when you hit the pillow at the end of the day, you're like, it's just done.
Yeah, well, fortunately, we moved to small press. So most larger cons, I'm in small press. We were at Phoenix, I think the same time you were, the last time, which is a year ago?
Yeah, I was there last year.
Yeah, we were there last year, pretty much at the last minute, because they sent me, I think they had an opening, and so they sent me like, oh, if you come, we'll give you this discount. I'm like, okay, I'll do that.
On the 3rd floor, or were you in the basement?
No, we were on the main floor.
Okay.
But we were in the back.
Okay.
We ended up doing really well, which surprised me considering where we were at. But no, we did do well.
No, it's well trafficked, I think.
Yeah. No, it was good. We we had already planned on going to Denver, and so we ended up just taking 2 weeks, and we went from Phoenix, LA to Phoenix, and then Phoenix to Denver, and just to do the cons back to back. No, it was hard. It was very hard. I wouldn't do that. I really wouldn't do that again. But I mean, yeah, we did really well. But yeah, it's tough to sit in a car for days on end like that.
Mm-hmm.
Though we are in love with audiobooks. Absolutely love audiobooks.
Yes, and those are big. And everybody that asks when they stop by the table if we have books, audiobooks are now the thing. So, we have to make sure that books are available in all the formats, because you never know when somebody's going to come up and they're going to ask that. And if you have one, I've actually had a customer come up and we talked and they asked if I had an audiobook, and I thought, in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, they may not buy anything, whatever. Give me the information. Yeah. And no, he stood there right in front of me on his phone and ordered the book. He was like, oh my God, I only do audiobooks right now. And he sat there and ordered it right in front of me. And I was shocked. I'm like, okay, good thing I had that ready.
Yeah. I'm obviously can't do audiobooks for graphic novels. I don't have one for the novel or the anthology yet. I did it for a short story. It was an experiment of mine. I used Find Away Voices, which is through Smashwords, and just as an experiment, because I figured short story, it's not going to cost me that much. Just use it as a learning tool, and it actually worked out really well. So yeah, that's right now my first and only audiobook. I doubt it'll make back what I spent on it.
Yeah, the problem with audiobooks, I mean, they're good, and everyone is definitely leaning more towards them. But what a lot of people don't understand is the cost. And on average, you're paying about $200 to $400 per finished hour of book. Yeah. And if you've got novel-sized book, you're probably looking at a good 5 to 6 hour book. That gets really expensive.
Yes.
Really fast. So it's cost prohibitive to a lot of people right now because of that initial investment. Now, ACX does offer like a royalty share program, but you're tied to that for 7 years, which doesn't sound like much at first, but it's a long time. If you're a series writer and you want to continue with the same audio engineer, voice actor, you're locked in for a very long time if you're producing each of those books. So it's...
Yeah, that's why I did Find Away Voices, and I paid them. I said, here. And I still own everything, and it's distributed on everything. And I've made a lot of sales through libraries. I mean, they get the library discount, which is fine. That's great. Glad they did it. I mean, I found them to be seamless. I mean, I had no problem at all. I had read on a thread a few months ago someone else who had a horrible experience at Find a Way, but it almost seemed like whoever he or she was dealing with, maybe it was a new person or interim person, or they got caught between, a changeover in staff. It's hard to say, but.
Well, I think in every business there's going to be, some bumps in the road, and you got to look overall at the experience before making a judgment.
There is an issue, particularly on comics, of particularly independent creators, are you going to finish the story? Mm-hmm. And people don't want to, buy something and become, involved and engaged in a story they like, never to see it come to fruition. And, unfortunately that happens, in indie creators all the time, because not that they don't want to finish, but sometimes, life intervenes.
Yep.
Life happens and they can't. I mean, I know a number of comics, indie comics out there that I picked up the first and or second issue, and they were never to be seen again. And I'm going like, oh, that's really sad, because this was really good. But you never know. You don't know what happens with people. So, and anyway, the point is, to these people who just kept stopping by and chatting and saying hello, you just have to keep that connection, because you just don't know what's in their head. Mm-hmm. unless they tell you.
And again, back to that beautiful thing about conventions, especially fantasy conventions, they're wearing their fandom out there. You know exactly where you're connecting with them. There was a couple, and I can't remember if it was last year's Comic-Con or if it was the year before, but I've always been a huge fan of John Barrowman. Absolutely love him. Again, Doctor Who, so Torchwood.
Yes.
Yeah, he's one of my absolute favorites. And there was a couple, and I remember them at the beginning of the convention because they were dressed in some kind of Doctor Who cosplay, and I can't remember exactly what they were wearing, but I connected with them because of that. And we had a great conversation, and they were there to get a photo op with John Barrowman. Mm-hmm. And I told them how jealous I was. I wish I could go up and get a photo op too. And we connected. They came back. It was either the next day or the day after, because Phoenix is a 4-day.
Yeah.
And they came back just to show me their picture that they took with him. And we had another great conversation. And it was never about selling the book. It was just, we connected. Yeah. Well, finally, on the last day of the convention, they swung by again, but their daughter was with them this time. And their daughter happened to like one of my books. Mm-hmm. And there was no hard sell or anything. They were just like, oh, yeah, hey, we're stopping by to say hello again. Their daughter happened to look at one of the books and went, oh, I like this. And that was it. They bought. And I feel like it was the connection that was made more than anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I actually have a fun John Barrowman story. I was in the lobby of one of the hotels at San Diego Comic-Con. My husband, I think I was waiting for a meeting or something. Anyway, I saw him come down in the elevator, and he was clearly in a hurry. And this young lady, and he kept saying, and he was even saying, he goes, I'm late. I am so late. I am so late. And this young lady stops him for a selfie, and he graciously stops, gets a selfie, and he smiles, and, it says hello to her, and he goes, I am so late, and he goes running off. But he took the time to take the selfie with her, because she was so excited to run in to him.
Aww.
And, talk about, a great, classy guy, great guy. It was a lot of fun to just watch that and him go like, I'm so late, and just go running out the door.
I used to bring my oldest daughter to conventions with me, and she was my table helper when it was just me and her. And there was one convention we went to, and Michael Rooker was there, and he was one of the headliners that was doing photo ops and had his own booth. And so as we're doing our thing, we're sitting at our table, he decides to walk the floor.
Okay.
And of course, wherever a celebrity goes, there's a crowd that follows. And I'd had my daughter so well trained to give anybody that walked by a bookmark. And so as he passed by our booth, and I'm just going, that's Michael Rooker. She's like, here, have a bookmark. And he stops, and he takes the bookmark, and he says thank you, and then he grabs the phone, he's like, let's get a selfie, and he just starts taking pictures with our phone. I was like, that is so awesome. And after he walked away, I was like, you know who that was, right? And she's like, no. And I was like, okay, what would she have seen that he was in? I was like, okay, Guardians of the Galaxy. He played Yondu, the blue guy. And she went, oh, really? She was just like, oh my God. So I sent her over just as a thank you, because I know they charge for all their pictures.
Yeah.
I signed one of my books, and I said, just bring it over and say, this is a thank you. Thank you for taking pictures with us.
Yeah. She
wandered over, and she gave him the book. She comes back with 2 signed prints from him.
Oh my God.
Oh Jesus. I mean, I was dumbstruck. This was so amazing. Like, that's what you want from a celebrity interaction. You want somebody who's just genuine and kind, and I was just so happy that he was one of those people. Because you never know.
Yeah. That's nice. I mean, I never understand the celebrities who are rude to fans, because the reason they're celebrities is because of the fans.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. When I'm not writing, I'm helping other people get their books out. I do run Spilling Ink every week, which is kind of like my own mini version of doing panels. So I get to talk to new people every week, which is good. And that is my favorite hour of the week for that reason. because
That's
I
great.
have that socialization every week that I know I can get. And I've also started reading every week. So every Sunday, I read a chapter or two from one of my books.
I keep thinking like, oh, I like signed up for all these webinars and everything, and I'm like, and then they come, and it's like, I don't want to do it.
Oh.